It happened on a Thursday, the kind of unremarkable morning that begins with a coffee mug going cold and ends with forgotten groceries on the passenger seat. I was standing at the window, sipping the last inch of lukewarm espresso when she walked in, humming to herself like she always did after a run. Her hair was pulled back into a high ponytail, cheeks flushed, yoga tights clinging to her like a second skin. It was familiar, normal, almost. She leaned in to kiss me, and that's when I noticed it. The scent. Cologne. Not mine. It wasn't subtle, either. It was sharp, woody, unfamiliar, like cedar and musk melted down and bottled with deceit. My cologne was a mild citrus blend I'd worn for years. She loved it. This was entirely different. Alien. I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at her, heart skipping one too many beats. She didn't seem to notice. She breezed past, tossing her gym bag by the front door, muttering something about the neighbor's barking dog and how the sunrise looked better than yesterday's. I stood frozen, holding the ceramic mug like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone at the gym brushed past her. Maybe it was from a seat on the subway. Maybe. But the doubt was planted. I followed her scent through the hallway. That lingering trace, like ghost footsteps, followed her from room to room. I couldn't stop noticing it now, the way it clung to her clothes, wove into her hair, settled like fog over her skin. I even pretended to hug her longer than necessary, just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Nope. It was there. Strong. Undeniably male. She showered while I stood in the kitchen, pulse pounding like I'd just run a marathon. My mind ticked through possibilities, each one more damning than the last. I opened her gym bag. I don't know why. I didn't expect to find anything. Maybe a receipt. A number. Lipstick she didn't wear for me anymore. But there was nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing except the subtle whiff of that same cologne on her damp workout towel. I placed it back, careful not to leave a trace. Then I opened the laundry hamper. Same thing. The scent, again, soaked into the armpits of her tank top. Someone had been close to her. Very close. The rest of the day passed in slow motion. She went back to work, marketing executive at a boutique firm downtown. And I sat at home, supposedly working remote, staring at spreadsheets I couldn't focus on. The numbers blurred. So did the facts. I could feel something unraveling beneath the surface. We'd been married 8 years. Madeline and I. No kids, by choice. A beautiful house on the outskirts of town. Garden parties with the neighbors. A dog named Huxley who shed too much, but loved us like we were the center of the universe. On paper, we were solid. Stable. Predictable. But then there was this cologne. And the way she smiled a second too long after checking her phone. The sudden shift in her schedule over the last few months. The days she came home too tired to talk. The nights she turned away from me in bed. And now, this invisible man, embedded in scent, in her clothes, in our home, mocking me from a distance. That evening, I watched her from the corner of my eye as we sat in front of the TV. She laughed at the wrong parts. Checked her phone twice. Her thumb hovered over something before she put it face down on the coffee table. I noted it all. The seed of suspicion had become a vine, winding itself through every interaction. And once doubt takes root, you start seeing things. I stayed up long after she went to sleep. The hallway creaked as I made my way to her bag again. Nothing new. I tiptoed back into the bedroom. She slept soundly, one leg kicked out from under the covers, arm flung over my side of the bed like she had no idea I hadn't been beside her for hours. I lay down beside her. I didn't sleep. The next day, I started my own quiet investigation. I didn't want to be rash. I wasn't going to storm in with accusations. That wasn't me. I wanted evidence. Hard facts. I worked in IT. After all, data, systems, patterns. That's how I solve problems. That's how I was going to approach this. I started with the laundry. That morning, after she left for work, I sifted through the basket again. Her blouse from 2 days ago, same scent. Slightly faded, but there. That tank top from the gym, it smelled stronger near the neckline. Like someone's neck had pressed there. Someone else's. Then I found something new. A receipt. Not unusual on its own. She was always tucking them into pockets and forgetting about them. But this one was different. Folded tightly and crumpled deep into the pocket of a blazer I hadn't seen her wear in months. It was from a hotel downtown. The Maison Royale. A boutique place, expensive, classy, discreet. 2 days ago. Lunch hour. One item. A single glass of wine. Room service. For one. I stared at the print, heart thudding. She hadn't mentioned a lunch meeting that day. In fact, she said her team ordered Thai and ate at their desks. So what was she doing at a luxury hotel? I snapped a photo of the receipt with my phone and put it back exactly where I found it. My stomach churned. The next few days, I began to piece together a pattern. She would leave the house at 7:30, as always. But once she was gone, I checked her route using the GPS tag we both shared, a safety feature we agreed on after she got lost hiking last year. I'd never needed to use it before. Now, it told a different story. Monday, straight to work. Tuesday, detour, 30 minutes unaccounted for near the Maison Royale. Wednesday, gym, then home. That was the day of the Cologne. Thursday, yesterday, gym again, then another 20-minute pause in the same area. Always between 8 o'clock and 9:30. Always alone. Except, not really. I started to keep notes. Times, distances, behaviors. Each scribble felt like a betrayal. Of her, of us, of who I thought we were. But I couldn't stop. The scent, the lies, the hotel, it all pointed to something real. Something I didn't want to believe. Friday morning, I followed her. I stayed back 3 car lengths, blending into traffic like a ghost. She didn't notice. She pulled into the gym parking lot, went inside with her usual bag, same stride. I parked across the street, behind a pharmacy, and waited. 20 minutes later, she came out. Alone. Or so I thought. Then he emerged. Tall, clean-cut, athletic, maybe early 40s. Wore a charcoal blazer and had that smug, easy gait of someone who believed the world owed him nothing because it already gave him everything. He smiled at her, said something that made her laugh. She touched his arm. And then the final nail. He leaned in, pressed a kiss to her neck, right where I smelled the cologne. She didn't pull away. She smiled. That was when I felt it, a cold, hollow collapse inside me. Like the floor of my chest had given out, and everything just fell into itself. I took a photo. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because now I knew the truth. But I still didn't know the full story. How long? How deep? Who he was? How many lies were layered beneath this? That night, I kissed her cheek before bed. She smelled like vanilla soap. And a trace of him. Tomorrow, I'd find out everything. Saturday morning dawned with the weight of betrayal pressing against my ribs like a vice. I barely slept. My mind played that moment over and over. The way he leaned in like he'd done it 100 times, like he had the right. And the way Madeline smiled, relaxed, unhurried, as if the kiss was an expected part of their routine. I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee gone cold. The steam had long since vanished, but I kept holding it. It grounded me. It was something real in a house full of falsehoods. Madeline came downstairs wearing my old college hoodie, the one that always swallowed her frame, and kissed the top of my head. Morning, sleepyhead, she said. 1 eggs. I shook my head. She began humming as she cracked them into the pan, a casual rhythm to her movements that made me want to scream. My gaze drifted to the back of her neck. That same spot, still raw from yesterday's image. As she cooked, I stared at her like a detective might stare at a suspect. Not with hate, but with clinical detachment. How long had she been lying to me? How long had she been able to look me in the eye and pretend everything was fine? After breakfast, I told her I had an early meeting with a new client. She offered to drive me since her schedule was light, but I declined with a smile I barely stitched together. You've done enough, I said quietly. She didn't catch the meaning. I left. I wasn't headed to any meeting. I drove straight to the Maison Royale Hotel, parking 2 blocks away so I wouldn't be seen. The concierge barely looked up when I entered. My palms were sweating as I approached the desk. I'm here to book a private brunch suite. I lied, keeping my voice confident. Same arrangement my wife had earlier this week. She said the staff was exceptional. The concierge looked up, smiling. Of course. May I have her name? Madeline Halberd, I said. He scanned the computer. Yes. She booked one of our deluxe spa suites on Tuesday morning for a half-day rate. He didn't even flinch. Would you like the same? No, I said. That'll be all. Thank you. I left, heart thudding. Now I had confirmation, it wasn't just lunch. She booked a suite. Half-day. Private. She'd lied without blinking. Back in the car, I stared at the steering wheel for nearly 10 minutes before I could drive again. My hands were trembling. Not from rage, not yet. from the emptiness that bloomed in my chest. The slow realization that the woman I'd loved for nearly a decade had carved a life outside of ours. One with another man. A parallel existence that didn't include me. I drove home with a new objective. I needed to know who he was. Not just his cologne or his laugh. I needed a name. A history. A weak point. That afternoon, while Madeline was out shopping, I searched her office. The home one, tucked upstairs with the antique oak desk and the framed wedding photo that suddenly seemed like a joke. Her laptop was password protected, a simple 4-digit PIN she'd used since grad school. It took seconds. I didn't start with her email. I started with the calendar. There it was. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning for the past 2 months, a 2-hour block titled simply Client Consult, MR. As if mocking me. MR. The Maison Royale. Convenient. I dug into her email next. Nothing suspicious. Everything was scrubbed clean, organized into folders so pristine it was like looking at a freshly painted wall. No text threads. No late-night messages. Just invoices, newsletters, auto-replies. But the trash folder had one message she'd forgotten to delete. It was from a man named Vincent. The subject line, "Next Thursday, same room?" That was all it said. No body text. I copied his email, then shut everything down, careful to leave it exactly as I found it. When she returned, I was in the kitchen pretending to read the news. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted to order in tonight. I nodded, murmuring, "Sure." I watched her walk away. How easily she wore the disguise of a devoted wife. Later that night, I traced the email. Vincent R. Bellwood. LinkedIn gave me the first hit. Vincent R. Bellwood, Executive Creative Director, Elm and Sage Agency. Her agency. Of course. He was older, early 40s, distinguished looking, with a sprinkle of silver at the temples and a profile photo where he was laughing at some unseen joke. I stared at his smile for a long time. It was smug. Effortless. The kind of smile that came from knowing you could take what you wanted. I pulled up the agency's leadership page. There he was, right below Madeline. His bio praised his collaborative leadership style and gift for inspiring innovation. I bet. Scrolling further, I found a staff photo from their winter retreat. They were on the beach somewhere, palm trees in the background, half the team in matching polos. And there they were, side by side. Vincent with an arm around Madeline's shoulders, both mid-laugh. Her eyes crinkled just so. That was the smile I used to earn. Something inside me burned. The next morning, I began to prepare. Not for a confrontation. Not yet. For something deeper. Something colder. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to ask why. I was going to destroy everything they had. I began with the GPS data. I downloaded a tracker app to her car's system using the login we shared for emergencies. Within minutes, I could see her movements in real time. Every stop, every idle, every turn. The data refreshed every 5 seconds. I installed surveillance software on our home network, silently copying every file she uploaded from her phone or computer to the cloud. It ran quietly in the background, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Then I called in a favor from a friend in cybersecurity. He owed me from a job we worked together years ago. "I need to know if an email account is shared with anyone," I said. "You think she's cheating?" "I know it. I'll have something by Monday," he promised. That night, Madeline crawled into bed beside me and curled up like she always did, her head on my shoulder, her leg draped over mine. She whispered, "I love you." I stared at the ceiling and said, "I love you too." It wasn't a lie. I loved the version of her that existed before Vincent. But that version was dead now. And by the time I was done, their little affair wouldn't just be exposed. It would be obliterated. Sunday came dressed in quiet dread. The morning sun filtered in through our bedroom curtains, casting long golden lines across the hardwood. Madeline stirred beside me, her breath soft and rhythmic. Peaceful, like someone without a care in the world. My eyes remained open, locked on the ceiling as the hum of Betrayal buzzed louder in my ears than any alarm clock could. She stretched and sighed. "Want to walk Huxley with me later?" "Sure," I murmured. My voice felt foreign in my throat. Even my words seemed like part of some performance now. We made coffee. She stood barefoot by the counter, absently scrolling through her phone. I watched her fingers dance across the screen. She was always so good at multitasking. She'd made a career out of it, juggling accounts, managing clients, spinning truth into something more marketable. How easy it must have been to spin the truth in our marriage, too. I waited until she went upstairs to shower. Then I opened the tracking app. At 7:46 a.m. on Thursday morning, she'd left the house and stopped by a gas station 10 minutes away. Not unusual. But after that, there was a detour, again, to the Maison Royale. 22 minutes. That wasn't just coffee in the lobby. That was time behind closed doors. I tapped through her device history. She'd connected to the hotel's guest Wi-Fi 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Once during what she claimed was an agency-wide Zoom call she needed quiet for. Quiet, indeed. I closed the app, my stomach a swirling knot of nerves and nausea. That afternoon, she asked if I wanted to join her at the store. Just groceries. Normal stuff. I declined, saying I had emails to catch up on. Something she didn't question. Once her car pulled out of the driveway, I went straight to the air vent in the guest room. It was the same one I'd seen her use in the bathroom mirror reflection earlier that week, when I was scrubbing footage from the security cams. I'd caught her tucking something behind the slats, unaware that the little black lens above the vanity had seen everything. My hands trembled slightly as I unscrewed the vent cover. There it was. A phone. Not her usual one. That was still in her purse. This was smaller, sleeker. The kind of device people use when they don't want to be found, when they're living double lives. It was off. I held it for a moment, staring at its blank screen as if it might confess. Then I turned it on. There was no passcode, either a mistake or confidence bordering on arrogance. The messages loaded slowly. There were only a few, but each was damning. One in particular stood out. Vincent, still dreaming about yesterday. You were unbelievable. Same time Tuesday. Madeline, can't wait. Already missing your smell. I stopped reading. The screen blurred as fury fogged my vision. My hands clenched into fists so tight, the plastic casing creaked. She wasn't just cheating. She was in love, or at least pretending to be. That night, I placed the phone exactly where I'd found it. Then I retrieved a small SD card from the hidden camera above the vanity and copied the footage to a separate hard drive I locked in my desk drawer. I didn't want to see her smile at her reflection while hiding another man's messages. But I needed it. For later. For what I was planning. Monday arrived with the kind of brittle cold that makes every sound sharper. Madeline left for work early. Said she had a meeting with a luxury skincare brand she'd been courting for months. I smiled and waved her off like the supportive husband I wasn't. Once she was gone, I went back into her office. I'd received an email the night before from my cybersecurity friend. His message was brief, but it said everything. Your wife's email is linked to a secondary Dropbox, shared with V. Bellwood at Elmsage. Calm. It's full of photos and videos. I didn't dig further, didn't feel right. But you need to see this. I opened the link he'd attached. There they were. Rows of thumbnail images. Madeline in different dresses. Madeline sipping wine in a hotel bed. Madeline, shirt half unbuttoned, kissing Vincent like it was the most natural thing in the world. Some were selfies. Others were taken by him, his arm visible in some, shadowed in others. One folder simply titled, Ours. I didn't open the videos. Not yet. I copied everything. And then I began my plan. By Tuesday, I knew what I had to do. I created a new email address. Something generic. I attached 3 photos, not the most explicit, but intimate enough. Madeline kissing Vincent. Her lying next to him in bed. The two of them holding hands at the Maison Royale. A coffee cup in each hand like any other couple. I addressed the email to her boss, the head of the agency, her HR manager, her client from the luxury skincare brand. I left no name. No explanation. Just the subject line. Thought you should know what your creative director and your account manager are doing during business hours. I didn't send it. Not yet. But I saved the draft. Later that evening, I made dinner. Penne arrabbiata, her favorite. She was in a good mood. Maybe it was the successful pitch, or maybe she was still glowing from whatever she and Vincent had shared that morning. She smiled. Talked about expanding her client list. About maybe opening her own firm someday. I smiled back, nodded, listened, and all the while, I kept the email draft open on my phone beneath the table. At 2 a.m., I couldn't sleep. I walked to my office, sat at my desk in the dark, and stared at the screen. The cursor blinked inside the draft email. Taunting. I hovered over send. But I didn't click. Not yet. Because I realized something. This wasn't enough. Not yet. Revenge, real revenge, couldn't just be exposure. It had to be devastating, personal, precision cut. So I deleted the draft. I had something better in mind. Something Madeline wouldn't see coming. The pieces were all on the board now. I just needed to make my move. The moment revenge stops being abstract and becomes a plan, something inside you changes. It's subtle at first. A shift in the way you move through rooms. How you speak. The pauses between your words. It's like a mask you wear so well, even you forget it's not your real face. By Wednesday morning, I was no longer the betrayed husband. I was the architect of her unraveling. Madeline went to work early. I kissed her on the cheek like always. She wore her sapphire blouse, the one I bought for her birthday last year. It had become her favorite. Ironic, considering she wore it most often on the days she disappeared with him. After she left, I executed the first phase. I knew Vincent's wife. We'd never formally met, but her name appeared once in a casual email Madeline showed me. A dinner invitation she had declined. Too awkward, she'd said, waving it off. Office politics. But I remembered the name. Kelsey Bellwood. It didn't take long to find her Instagram. Public, of course, full of sunset hikes, weekend getaways, golden retriever photos. I created a burner account, and I sent her 3 photos. No message. No introduction. Just Madeline and Vincent. The kiss. The bed. The one with his hand on her thigh, her wedding ring glinting in the frame. I didn't need to explain. Kelsey would understand. The photos spoke for themselves. That afternoon, I printed 10 more copies. I placed them in envelopes, unmarked, and mailed them to the agency's board members, a few top clients, and the HR department. Anonymous tips are rarely believed. But photographic evidence? That gets attention. By Thursday morning, Madeline was agitated. She came home late the night before, said traffic was hell, but her eyes were restless. She picked at her dinner, barely touched her wine, checked her phone more than usual. Something was happening. She wasn't sure what yet, but I was. The next morning, I played dumb. Everything okay? I asked as she scrolled her screen with a scowl. She hesitated. Yeah, just some weird emails from work. What kind of weird? She shrugged. Nothing serious. Probably spam. I nodded. You've got that big client meeting today, right? Postponed, she said, eyes still on her phone. Sudden calendar shift. The first ripple. By noon, I had confirmation from my friend in cybersecurity. The Dropbox was locked down. Password changed. Emails scrambled. Damage control. Too late. The files were already downloaded. Duplicated. Backed up. Distributed. They couldn't bury the affair now. Too many copies. Too many inboxes. And the best part? I'd never spoken a word. My hands were clean. Let her lie her way out. Let her squirm. That night, she didn't come home until after 10. She looked shaken. Pale. She dropped her bag with more force than usual, kicked off her heels, and stood in the hallway like a woman staring down the barrel of something unseen. Everything okay? I asked again. She looked at me, eyes red-rimmed but defiant. Tough day? Internal chaos at work. You want to talk about it? No, she said flatly. Then she vanished upstairs without another word. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Friday. That's when the real storm hit. She didn't go to work. Told me she was sick. I nodded, feigning concern. Flu. Stomach. Maybe something I ate. She sat on the couch all day, eyes glued to her phone, only pretending to read. I could tell she wasn't even blinking sometimes. Her fingers hovered over the screen, never quite landing. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. That afternoon, I received a LinkedIn message from someone I didn't recognize. Hey, you don't know me, but I worked with your wife on a few campaigns. Word's going around the agency, you might want to call me. I didn't reply. Instead, I started preparing for the final phase. It was time to confront her. Not with rage, not with shouting, but with everything. I waited until nightfall. She was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables she wasn't hungry for, music low on the speaker. Something acoustic, melancholic. I walked in and placed the phone, her hidden phone, on the counter beside her. Her hand froze mid-chop. She looked down at the device like it had crawled out of the vent on its own. Then she looked at me, and for the first time in weeks, I saw something crack in her face. Fear. Where did you get that? She asked. I didn't speak. She picked it up slowly, like it might burn her. This isn't what you think, she started, voice trembling. It's exactly what I think, I said. Calm. Even. Listen, she began, but I held up a finger. No, I said quietly. I've seen the photos. The texts. I know everything. Her shoulders dropped. Mouth opened slightly. No words came out. She didn't even ask how I knew. Just silence. Why? I asked. Not out of desperation. Not seeking apology. Just curiosity. Cold, clinical curiosity. I don't know, she whispered. It just happened. That's a lie. She swallowed. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Another lie. She put the knife down. I was lonely, she said, voice shaking. You were always working. You stopped noticing things. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Stopped noticing? You mean like the scent on your clothes? The hidden phone? The hotel receipts? Her face flushed. It wasn't just physical. That made it worse. She looked at me then. Really looked. And I saw the moment she realized just how much I knew. And just how deep she'd fallen into something she couldn't fix. You've already sent them, haven't you? She asked. I didn't answer. Her hand trembled as she picked up the phone again, flipping it over as if it might hold the last shred of her normal life. I'm sorry, she whispered. The words landed like ash. I didn't nod, didn't blink. I turned and walked away, not in fury, but with finality. She called after me once. Please, don't leave it like this. I paused at the doorway. This isn't the end, I said without turning. It's the beginning. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that the real blow hadn't landed yet. That was reserved for Monday. That was when I would deliver the final stroke. The email I drafted that night, the one I deleted, I'd written a new one. To Vincent. To his board. To the press. With proof. But more than that. With details only she could have leaked. Details about client accounts. Timelines. A subtle suggestion of impropriety. All sent from her email address. All scheduled to go out at exactly 9 a.m. Monday morning. Unless I stopped it. And I wouldn't. By the time they pieced together who sent it, the damage would be done. Reputations. Contracts. Trust. All ash. She would lose everything. He would too. And me? I'd walk away. Clean. Satisfied. Unbroken. Almost. Monday arrived quietly, like any other. The sky outside was bruised with rain clouds. A soft drizzle tapped the windows, rhythmic and persistent, like fingers drumming on glass. The kind of weather that made you want to stay in bed, wrapped in warmth and denial. But denial wasn't an option anymore. I sat at my desk, watching the countdown timer on the email scheduler. 9 a.m. 3 minutes. The message to Vincent's firm was locked and loaded. It would look like it came from Madeline. The same tone, same formatting. A whistleblower-style bombshell linking the affair to agency misconduct. Leaked client information. Ethical violations. A perfect cocktail for corporate implosion. I took a deep breath. My finger hovered over the button labeled cancel. It would take one click. Just one. But I didn't move. Down the hall, Madeline was in the kitchen. She hadn't gone into work. She hadn't said much of anything since Friday. Her eyes were sunken, face pale. She moved like someone underwater, slow, distant, weightless with guilt. 9 a.m. The timer hit 0. The message was sent. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. Not in triumph. In finality. The fallout came fast. By noon, Vincent's name trended on social media, a scandal ballooning in real time. Corporate Twitter accounts issued vague, under-investigation statements. Clients pulled contracts. Lawyers were mentioned in hushed tones. Madeline didn't say a word, but I knew she knew. She kept pacing the house, checking her phone, breathing through her mouth like she was trying not to scream. I waited until evening. That's when I found her in the living room, curled on the couch, legs pulled beneath her like a child. She looked up as I entered. You did it, she said softly. I nodded. You ruined him. I did what you were never going to. Tears welled in her eyes, but none fell. She didn't beg. She didn't plead. Because there was nothing left to say. I sat in the chair across from her. This was never just about him, I said. You lied to me. For months. You built a second life and left me in the empty shell of the first. She looked away. I never stopped loving you, she whispered. That made me flinch. Not because it was touching, but because it was cruel. You loved who I was when it was convenient, I said. You loved me when I didn't ask questions, when I stayed in the dark. I didn't plan this. No, you just allowed it. She stood, slowly. What happens now? I thought about that. The logical step was divorce. Splitting assets. Selling the house. Lawyers in courtrooms and weekends divided like property. But logic wasn't what I felt. I looked at her, not as the woman I married, but as the one who hollowed our life out from the inside. The person who smiled at my touch while texting someone else beneath the dinner table. The person who said I love you through lips that still tasted like another man. I'm leaving, I said. Her shoulders sagged, but she didn't argue. I'll be out by the end of the week. Where will you go? I didn't answer, because I didn't know yet. The next few days passed like fragments of someone else's life. I packed methodically, room by room, my things and only mine. She watched, but never offered help, never tried to stop me. At night, we slept in silence. Not together, just in proximity. On Friday, I took Huxley with me. I couldn't leave him behind. He was the only part of that house that still felt like home. She stood in the doorway as I carried the last box to the car. I'll never forgive myself, she said. I didn't stop walking, because forgiveness wasn't mine to give. It belonged to the man I used to be, and he was gone. Months passed. I rented a small apartment downtown, nothing fancy. A one-bedroom with creaky floors and thin walls. But it was mine. Unshared. Unstained. I filled it with second-hand furniture and new books. Cooked for one. Slept deeply. Eventually, the silence stopped feeling empty. It started feeling clean. I saw a therapist. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand the cracks. The ones in her, yes, but mostly the ones in me. The parts that ignored the signs. The parts that waited too long. The parts that loved too hard without questioning. I started running again. Cut carbs. Read poetry. Strange how healing sometimes looks like cliché, but still works. Vincent, as it turned out, left the agency in disgrace. His wife divorced him quietly. Madeline kept her job for a while, but the whispers never stopped. Eventually, she resigned. Last I heard, she moved 2 states away. Some cousin had a guest house. I didn't care. Not really. Because I had rebuilt myself. Not into someone colder, or harder, or crueler, but someone wiser. Someone who no longer needed answers from people who couldn't tell the truth. Sometimes I still think about that scent. The cologne. That sharp, foreign thing that lingered like a warning. How something so small could fracture an entire life. But now, I don't smell it as betrayal. I smell it as a signal. A moment the universe whispered, "Wake up." And I did. I woke up. And I walked away. Not broken. Not bitter. Just awake.